Hello, hello.
Oh, hi, Angelica. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm running on my red eye sleep.
Where are you calling from currently?
I am in Atlanta right now. This is my first like for realsies like business trip in a hot second, and so I just flew across the country. I just flew across the country last night while it was a total kick save because like the pro tip on red eyes is you gotta get a window seat because that way you can do this
Yep, you can lean.
right up against the window. And for whatever reason, I had like forgotten to check in or whatever. And when I like when I went to check in, I was like in some terrible aisle seat, and I was like, oh
Oh no.
no. But then I was able to ask the nice person at the check-in desk, and they were like, okay, yeah, we'll fix that for you. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you.
Did you have someone next to you or you had the whole aisle to yourself and the window seat to lean in on?
Oh, no way, Jose. There was like a good like 300 people on this flight. It was amazing.
Uh,
It was like packed to the gills. I was like, wow,
Everyone
people
else
are really
sleeping on the plane.
yeah, I was like, people are really into this red eye. Anyway, it was like but don't worry, I've been pounding my coffee, so I'm ready to like talk data driven sales coaching. So cheers.
Ready to go. Love the energy. I have my sparkling water and we're all ready to go, waiting for more people to trickle in.
Mhm.
And we'll get started in a minute, but I definitely I'm so excited to have everyone here to talk about data-driven sales with Atrium's co-founder and CRO, Pete Kazanjy, flying all the way from Atlanta. We'll give a couple more minutes for folks to enter, and then we'll get started. And I
Yeah.
love the whole Ted Lasso. It's an amazing show. I'm really excited for the new season to come out soon.
Yeah, we have I've watched a couple of episodes because I have a 4-year-old, and so the only things that we're allowed to watch at this point are like Disney, Pixar, and like Star Wars, especially Lego Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
This is a thing, Lego Star Wars. It's like a whole thing. So there's like all this great all this great like TV stuff, especially stuff that's like work relevant. Like in a case of Atrium, we're all about like, data driven sales management and coaching. And so like I feel that I should like know way more about Ted Lasso than I do. But unfortunately, I haven't watched the whole thing yet. We definitely do not watch The Hangover with my 4-year-old, which is of course
Oh, no, no.
the other screenshot here.
Awesome. So let's get started. So before
All
we
right.
begin, I want to talk a little bit about the team at Modern Sales Pro, who's hosting the event today. For those who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pro is the largest revenue leadership community in sales management, sales revenue operation, sales development, and related supporting disciplines. Our mission is to create an environment for our 20K and growing members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and to see around corners they might not know about. We do that through great live sessions like the one you're at today, through our robust online forum and in-person events now that they're coming back. So for those who are not previously admitted, you should now have access to community. And if you don't, please don't hesitate to drop a team a note at modernsaleshq.com. And
Nice.
as
That
I mentioned,
sounds like an awesome community. People should be a part of it.
yeah, join. And as I mentioned, in-person events are back. If you like this content today, you'll love our 3-day Revenue Excellence Summit happening next month, April 12th to the 14th. We pulled together 11 events of amazing content and speakers that you'll hear from revenue leaders at Drift, Lean Data, Dialpad, Figma, and Atrium, and more. And I'll drop the link to register in the chat. So be sure to save your seat because it's going to be a great event. And enough about MSP. I know we all are excited to dive right in, but first let's go over some housekeeping rules. If you have any questions for Pete, definitely drop it in the Q&A chat function. And yes, this event is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to access the recording and key takeaways on the previous event slide after the event concludes.
Hey, Angelica, is this going to
Yeah.
be recorded?
It is going to be recorded.
It's going to be recorded.
So if you want to look back, definitely you can check it out, the recording after the event. We'll have all that in the post-event email. And if you have colleagues that missed it, we'll definitely send over the link so they can watch it during
Nice.
the replay. All right, now to our sponsor. Our founder of MSP and parent company Atrium is sponsoring this event today. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Pete to introduce Atrium himself and run the show from here. And I'll be back during the closing notes for some wrap ups. Pete,
Kill
take it
it.
away.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Angelica. Here, let me go ahead and share my hot little screen here. I'm only working off of one monitor right now. Here, watch out. We're gonna have like the Hall of Mirrors here while I share this. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this okay. So I'm Pete Kazanjy. I am the founder of Atrium. We make data-driven sales management software that exists to help managers, sales managers, so SDR, AE, AM, CSM managers use metrics to improve rep performance. That's what we exist to do. We are we are the sales scientists. We are the sales nerds. One of the cool things about Atrium is it takes about 90 seconds to set up and get yourself a world-class metrics harness. You can actually just sign up for a free account at atriumhq.com. It's just signing in with your Salesforce account, so it's pretty cool. Who am I? That's me probably about 6 years ago. A little less Pete, a little more hair. But a little bit of background on me and why you might be interested in what I have to say about this stuff. In addition to being the founder of Atrium, I also have a long and long and winding road in the realm of sales leadership and sales excellence. My first software company was a company called TalentBin that was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. At TalentBin, I went from being a product and product marketing generalist founder to our first sales rep, sales manager, sales leader, et cetera. It's acquired by Monster in 2014. Nearly 10 years ago. Geez Louise. I also wrote the book on the Modern Sales Handbook, Founding Sales, kind of cataloging my experience there. And of course, subsequent to that, founded Atrium, but also Modern Sales Pros, which Angelica did such a delightful job of explaining earlier. On the topic of books, a couple of books that I'm kind of crushing on right now that I'm really enjoying, because obviously I think a little bit about about sales excellence, think a little bit about modern sales. These are two of my current favorites. Five Secrets of a Sales Coach by Bray and Hillman. Absolutely fantastic. Written as a narrative, so it's kind of like a parable, a story. It's quite the page turner. It pairs really well with Crushing Quota by Michelle Vazana. Michelle and Jason Jordan, of course, wrote Cracking the Sales Management Code, which is kind of the modern sales, like data-driven sales instrumentation Bible. And so Crushing Quota is all about sales management. These are both about sales management and sales coaching. This one's like kind of more technical textbooky version, and this one is like the kind of like parable based page turner version. They pair extraordinarily well together, like chocolate and peanut butter. I highly recommend both of them. I think we're actually going to be dropping a sign up link in the chat if you're interested in getting copies of these. We actually have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them racked in a warehouse, along with a bunch of other books that we send out to customers and clients and what have you. So I think we're going to drop that link in the chat. But today, what we're going to be talking about is coaching, data-driven coaching. And so what my hope is that by the end of this event, you'll understand why coaching is so important in your organization, whether you're a manager who ought to be coaching his or herself, or you're a leader who has a bunch of managers that you should be empowering to coach or helping coach. And then so that's the first thing. And the second thing is that the reason why it's important to use data to help to coach we'll go into as well. But it's essentially those two things. Like one, you got to be coaching. Two, you got to be using data to do that coaching. And so that's my hope. That's going to be the argument I'm going to be presenting to you and how to implement that. But don't listen to me. You should listen to Gartner, because they're way more important than me. And so what you can kind of see here is that what Gartner has found is that high performing managers, that line manager level, who's got 6 AEs, 8 AEs, 8 SDRs, 10 SDRs, 12 SDRs going into them, they're really the kind of the difference between underperformance and outperformance in a sales organization. You can kind of see all sorts of delightful things that kind of come out of that: higher rep productivity, higher performing reps, better retention, which is really important because getting a rep to success only to have them attrit is like no bueno, not fun at all, higher level of effort, etc. And so the interesting thing, okay, so this is cool and all, but like, how does that happen? I think, and this is why I really crush on Michelle's book, because there's a bunch of really phenomenal research that's in there. And so what comes out of this is that the reason why managers should coach is because like revenue outperformance comes from it. And importantly, what you can kind of see here is that the top 25% of managers generate 39% more revenue than the bottom 25%. Okay, cool. So like on average, $3.5 million more of attainment. Okay, but the really interesting thing is how that happens. And what it comes down to is that the top 25% of managers, they get more reps to quota. Right. So what they're doing is they have their 6 AEs, their 10 AEs, their 6 AEs, their 8 AEs, the 10 AEs, they got, their SDRs or whatever. And what they're doing is they're taking the ones who are underperforming or mid-performing and they're pulling them up, because there's going to be a handful of folks who are just hitting the cover off the ball and like they don't need any babysitting. Right. And so in this case, what you can see is that by getting more reps to quota, by changing those individuals and helping them improve their performance, that's how those managers outperform. And so of course the way that you do that is by coaching, right? It's not like, hey everyone, just like play the game however you want. It's like, oh, you have a shortfall right here, let's improve that right there in order to make it such that your performance improves. And so the Michelle's kind of argument kind of continues here a little bit more. It's like they drive more, the organizations drive more revenue, but what's interesting is that these companies allocate more of their attention to those managers to make them more successful, right? So it's like a train the trainer situation or invest in the trainer. And so this is a very enlightened approach rather than having all those enablement resources go to individuals, helping managers be more performant. And it actually makes a ton of sense because this is something that we see quite a bit in the market, in the customers we interact with and the clients that we talk with, is that really that managers are underinvested in with respect to either training or tooling in order to succeed. And so there's kind of two components there. One is that manager enablement is kind of an afterthought. Most of the time our enablement resources go to our individual contributors, our AEs, our SDRs, et cetera, versus focusing in on the managers and making them more performant, which is kind of unfortunate, especially as relates to data-driven sales management, because one, where do managers come from? They're usually, pretty recently promoted ICs, especially in high growth startups. You get a lot of battlefield promoted staff, and so they're not like naturally, they don't have like 5 or 10 years experience doing management. And then moreover, when it comes to data-driven sales management, data-driven coaching, most AEs, SDRs, et cetera, are not coming from an analytical background. Right, they're coming from a communicator, a persuader, a relationship builder background. And so then if you combine that with the fact that the assets that we give most managers kind of look like inscrutable walls of charts, you can kind of understand why that ends up being very problematic and why most managers underperform, as relates to coaching, and especially as relates to data-driven coaching. And so but the reality is that there are a number of things, of kind of like required behaviors that managers ought to be doing in order to attain these these upsides right here. And so part of that is, yes, deal inspection and strategy, which most managers don't need any help being reminded to that they should be paying attention, they should be inspecting their reps deals and kind of like that. But there's actually a bunch of other things as well. It's not just this isn't the end all be all here. And instead, what managers should be doing, in addition, not instead, what they should be doing is they should be tracking progress towards goals for their reps, whether AEs or SDRs, what have you. In their one-on-ones, they shouldn't just be doing this. They should be looking at other data. They should be looking at metrics. Their one-on-one should not be pipeline reviews, and we'll talk about this more later. Their one-on-one should be about coaching, about underperformance in certain areas, improvement areas, etc. Moreover, they should be particularly doing that during new hire ramp, an extraordinarily important point in an AE's tenure at an organization, really paying attention to those leading indicators as they come into band. And then once you've got people up and running, you've got your 8 AEs. I like to think of them as like spinning plates. You've got your like plate spinning, and you're kind of making sure that everyone's jamming along there. Well, when you see something wobbling, right? When you see one of your plates wobbling, you got to be able to identify what the issue is and then jump in there and fix that. And then the same is true on the flip side. When you have people who are outperforming, it's really important for us to take that outperformance, that like outperformant behavior, and then spread it across to the rest of our team, because in so doing, we raise all the boats in that regard. Like we raise the tide and we raise all the boats by taking what someone has figured out as an outperformant behavior and then standardize that across the team. And of course, so these are the things that managers ought to be doing, and unfortunately they don't do this as much as they should. We're going to talk about how you can make space for do that, not to mention the fact that you've got all sorts of other fun things that managers have to spend their time doing. So and so broke up with so and so got their laptop stolen, et cetera, et cetera. So like being a manager is very hard, and so like being enabling them and giving them the right assets is very critical. And of course, if we don't do this left to their own devices, a lot of the times managers will just kind of end up doing this, right? Just deals, 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 deals. And unfortunately, that's not very high leverage. And so my argument to you all would be, we should be doing those different behaviors. We should be coaching and managing. And then moreover, secondarily, what we should be doing is we should be using data in order to do that. And the reason why we should be doing that is because data metrics is the mechanism by which we get leverage, right? We get out of anecdata, right? We're able to look across our team or look across our entire organization in a way that allows us to see everything that's going on and then very quickly jump into those issues or see where there's outperformance and then standardize that. And that's leverage. That's managerial leverage. Secondarily, we can get out of anecdata. Oh, well, I was listening to this one call. Oh, one call out of 100 that happened that week? Okay, tell me more about that that statistically significant sample size, dude. We can get out of anecdata, and which will also help us get more, be more performant there. And so when you kind of think about some of the ways that some of the situations that our managers are contending with right now, they provide a barrier to this. So for instance, riding along on calls is actually low leverage. It's a good thing to do if you're not going to do anything, but there's higher levered ways of going about that. Are you on the right call, right? Is this did that call go perfectly? Did you miss something? Should you have been on this call over here with another rep, et cetera, right? So you can, that's a very low leverage way of doing coaching. Closing deals for your reps is extraordinarily low leverage, and something that newly promoted managers definitely have a proclivity to do, right? Being super rep, that's kind of what we know how to do, so we're going to keep on doing it because we haven't been enabled as a manager. Deal inspection as well. Deal inspection is really important, but only doing that just gives you a deal by deal snapshot of what's going on. And then you as a manager have to then construct a pattern of what's happening with that rep versus looking at the metrics for that rep and saying, oh, actually, this rep has a conversion issue here at this point in the sales process, which you might be challenged to be able to intuit if you're looking at these things on a snapshot by snapshot basis. And so the idea, and of course, a remote sales organization doesn't really help with any of this, because a lot of folks who historically got by like what I like to say is instrumentation via osmosis, kind of like listening on the sales floor, all of a sudden that's gone. And so the cool thing about this is that with data, what you can do is you can see around corners and see things that are coming down the pike. It's very high leverage. And then moreover, what's even better is that when you make a change, because this is what what data-driven sales management and coaching is all about is it's about using data to improve rep performance. So we make a change, like, hey, change your swing like this, right? Keep your elbow up, or, hey, I want you to shoot like this. And then what we can do is we can see if it's working, right? There's a feedback loop there. We can say, oh, look, this behavior has now changed and has impacted this metric in the way that I would have expected it to have been impacted if that change was happening. Or alternatively, the other case, oh man, that change hasn't happened and the metric is not improving. And so what I'm describing right there is a feedback loop, which I like to analogize. And it's funny, I'm a big fan of this book, Boyd. It's about John Boyd. He was a fighter pilot and a fighter and an air-to-air warfare doctrine kind of scholar. Michelle Vazana actually talks about the OODA loop. So that's what this is: observe, orient, decide, and act. She talks about that with respect to management. It's actually something that I think about quite a bit with respect to entrepreneurship and also management as well. But the whole idea here is that what you're doing is you're doing this loop, right, where you observe what's going on. You observe what's happening in the world. And the way that we do this is, like, if you're a fighter pilot, like, you look around and see, like, where the other, where the other opponent is, or you're like looking at your radar or what have you. And in the case of sales management, you observe by like looking at metrics and data. Or if you're not doing that, you're doing the low leverage version. You're observing via deal inspection or whatever. But what we want to do is we want to observe. Then we make sense of what we're seeing. Right? We're looking at those metrics. And we're saying, oh, I see an issue right here. Oh, this person's bookings are pacing poorly. Oh, I'm also noticing that his win rate is off as compared to his peers. Interesting. Oh, I'm also noticing that he has a pipeline hygiene problem and his untouched opportunities are much higher than normal. Interesting. I have a theory. I have a hypothesis that his insufficient pipeline hygiene is negatively impacting his win rate, and that's negatively impacting his bookings. Wonderful. So now I'm going to so I've oriented, and so now I'm going to decide what I'm going to do about it. Okay, I have a hypothesis that this is the problem. I'm going to prescribe this solution here, or say, hey, you know what, we're gonna make sure that we give you space on your calendar in order to make sure that you're managing your pipeline sufficiently, and then we're going to deploy that. And then what happens is that we loop back again, right, back to the beginning in an appropriate amount of time. If you're a fighter pilot, maybe like 5 seconds later. It's like very fast. If you're doing sales management, maybe it's a week later, maybe it's 2 weeks later, in order to see, hey, did that prescription happen? Did that prescription and did it positively impact the metric that we were looking to improve? Like, and so in the example I was using earlier, hey, we've got this, we've got this pipeline hygiene problem. I prescribed the solution. Did untouched ops go down? Did stuck ops go down? Oh, look, it did. And then did 2 weeks later or 4 weeks later win rate go up? Oh, look, it did. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next thing. Or alternatively, whoa, we said we were going to do this pipeline hygiene thing, but your untouched ops volumes didn't go down. Why is that? Did that actually happen or did it not? Right. So, but by doing this loop, this data-driven loop, what we can do is we can change behavior for the better. And so this is what this looks like in sales management here. The kind of no data version of this is, which is kind of like the undesirable state, unfortunately, is like, oh man, I didn't see that. I kind of got hosed at the end of the quarter. I didn't see what was going on, and this person missed their bookings or whatever. The next step is, okay, well, like maybe I'll ask some questions in a very limited way. We're kind of going off opinions now. Oh man, how do I know if I'm right? I don't want to be that jerk who's like blowing up their spot. And plus, I don't really have anything to back up my hypothesis here. I just kind of have my spidey sense. Man, what can I do about this? And like a lot of managers, as I'm saying this, like I'm feeling like myself in the past, where I've had situations like that, many years ago. And I'm sure a lot of people are kind of identifying with that. We're like, yep, I've been in that situation, right? Whereas with data, what you can do is you say, hey, I see something weird over here. I can ask a couple extra questions. Like I was saying earlier, oh, I see a bookings problem. What are the upstream issues? Oh, is it an ASP problem, an average selling price? Oh, it's not. Oh, is it a win rate? Oh, yeah, it is a win rate. And so like you can dig into data a little bit more. and then pinpoint what our hypothesis is. We don't necessarily know if we're going to be right, but at least we have a reasoned hypothesis, and then take action to fix it. Right? And so that's what that OODA loop looks like in sales management. And so one of the places where I was kind of noting this earlier with 5 secrets of a sales coach, and again, I think we're going to drop a link in order for folks to sign up for that if they'd like to. A really closed loops 5 secrets of a sales coach has a really fun kind of like coaching methodology here that comes from the acronym coach here around kind of like challenging, outlining the action, like outlining what the issue is, putting an action plan in place, characterizing what the consequences would be associated with this, and then holding somebody accountable for those actions and reporting them back to the manager. I'm a big fan of that. And so just kind of give you some examples of like some real world examples of what coaching might look like versus not. I think we've all kind of like had experiences like this, right? So like not coaching would be something like, hey, when is the Lockheed deal coming in? Right. Versus a coaching approach there would be, hey, what's concerning you about the Lockheed deal? Or bringing data to bear and saying like, hey, you know what? I'm noticing that there's not a next meeting on the calendar with the Lockheed deal. Or I'm noticing that we've only interacted with 2 contacts in the Lockheed deal. Does that worry you? Right? Or hey, can you make this forecast bigger? What do you want coming out of that? Do you want them to like erroneously inflate amounts on their opportunities? Do you want them to update close dates for things that aren't going to close this quarter or this month to close this month? Versus, hey, I've noticed that your forecast seems like you're a little bit behind. What do you think we might be able to do that we could pull things forward there? Or not, like maybe we can't, maybe we're hosed. And then moreover, how can we avoid this situation if we're behind for this quarter? Okay, maybe we can pull a rabbit out of our hat, but even better, how can we avoid this situation in the future? Right. And then maybe what we'll do is in a QBR, we'll figure out exactly how we ended up in a pacing behind situation. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. But one of the things you'll notice here is that a lot of the time we're leading with data. I've observed your meeting volumes over the last 4 weeks are lighter than usual. I've noticed that you have a number of ops in your pipe that haven't been touched in some time. We're leading with data here in order to help us say, hey, here's the thing that I observed, right? Here's this thing that I observed up here. What can we, did you see this? What can we potentially do about this? I have a hypothesis here. Let's talk about this. So that's kind of like what that kind of the micro actions of coaching looks like. So then the question is like, okay, well, how do we systematize this across the team? And how do we embed this into our operating rhythm? Because intentions are all well and good, but making sure that it actually happens is very critical. And so I'm a big fan of what are known as operating rhythms. We have a joke here on the Atrium sales team. We say the calendar is destiny. I think my reps, every time I say that, they kind of like roll their eyes in the back of their head, but it actually is very true. And so what we want to do is we want to ensure that there's time on the calendar in order to make sure that this consumption of data is happening so we can do this observation that kicks off the rest of the coaching behavior. And so these are usually the way that happens in operating rhythms is through a series of meetings. And so these are some examples of those. There can be more, but like a pipeline review, pretty straightforward, very vanilla, right down the pipe. That could be individual or team based, and usually that's a top to bottom inspection of. The way I like to do that is a top to bottom inspection of just kind of metadata, so like close dates, amounts, stages, forecast categories, etc. Versus as distinct from deal strategy. Deal strategy is about like really getting into down funnel deals, maybe something that's a little sticky, something that's kind of a pain in the butt for the rep, where it's not like doing top to bottom inspection, but it's reviewing some top deals and kind of noting where we can help there. This is distinct from a one-on-one meeting where a one-on-one is not a deal review. It's instead focused on reviewing metrics and progress on coaching initiatives. We'll kind of get more back into this a little bit in a second, but it's about the human. It's about improving their behavior. It's about identifying issues, and it's about like coaching. And then of course there's kind of like more there's like less frequent things like QBRs, where it's just kind of like a one-on-one, like a very holistic one-on-one that happens once a quarter in order to understand what's going on with a rep or a team or what have you. And so that you can kind of look, this right here is a broken out calendar of an operating rhythm here, where you can see here's Monday. We have, this is like what we do is we have a sales team meeting on Monday. We have a bunch of different stand-ups. We have a pipeline review, a communal pipeline review on Wednesday. All the one-on-ones are every 2 weeks. For the whole team, and then moreover and then scattered throughout the rest of the week, we have deal strategy reviews. Cool. So then the other thing is like, okay, if you have these things on the calendar, well, what kind of goes into those meetings? And the important thing is like, you need to have the assets. You need to have the assets that are available in order for you to do that do that observation either ahead of the meeting or like in the meeting. And so this is like literally what reports and dashboards and other kind of data-driven management assets are really for. And so just really quickly, the way to kind of think about what reports and dashboards kind of being one of the kind of the meat and potatoes version of this, how you should think about reports and dashboard is that for each report, you should think about it as answering a question, right? Like an important question that you care about. Like a good example of this would be, how many ops have the SDRs created this month so far? Okay, that's an important question, because if you're like right now, it's the 23rd of March. If you know that you want to get to 100 opportunities created across the entire SDR team, how many ops in that month, how many ops they've created so far this month is a really important metric, right? Or how many, and then moreover, it might be then the next question there might be, and how many has each SDR contributed, right? So each report is a different question, and then similarly, a dashboard is a roll up. It's an aggregation of a bunch of different reports. So, and importantly, the way you should think about a dashboard is, these are a bunch of questions that I'm going to answer at this point in time. At this point in time right now. And this is where people oftentimes screw up dashboards, is they just end up, and this is partially because putting together traditional reporting assets and dashboards and things like BI and Salesforce and what have you is like such a pain in the butt. But what ends up happening is people get these like magnificent sprawling dashboards that are just like giant kitchen sinks. And so it's just like trying to understand what's going on within there is just astronomically difficult, versus saying, hey, no, this right here, this dashboard is for this one-on-one, and we have like 4 tiles in it. Or this dashboard right here, this ramping dashboard, I look at it on Tuesday mornings every morning. Like, it's not even in a meeting, it's just like sent to me every morning, and I look at that and has like 4 metrics on it around opportunity ownership for for each rep over time, and their customer facing meeting volumes. And so the way to think about dashboards is like an aggregation of reports at a given point in time that you need to look at. And then the question is like, okay, well, how do you lay these things out? I'm a big fan of you doing multiple views per metrics, usually like a total with a trend, or a team total with per rep contribution for that. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like here in a second there. But what that does is that it makes it such that it's very easy to answer the next question, where you can say like, oh, okay, here's a total of, I don't know, use the SDR example earlier. Here's the total of how many opportunities each SDR has created so far this month. Oh, this rep is down a little bit. That's interesting. How long has that been the case? Oh, well, there's the trend one next to him. And I can see, oh, it's just he jumped down and then jumped back up the next week. Okay, I'm not worried about it. Versus, oh, this person's been kind of deteriorating for a while. So that's multiple views per metrics there. So how do you do this? Kind of the traditional like legacy way of doing this is doing it in your CRM, doing battle with Salesforce reporting or HubSpot reporting or what have you. The good news is it's available right now. It's very flexible if you know how to do it. The downside is you need somebody to build it for you. Can end up being very time consuming. I mean, very, very good at Salesforce reporting and dashboarding, and it's still one of those things where like each report still takes me like 5 minutes for putting together a dashboard. Is like a multiple hour program, kind of depending, and of course like they end up being very fragile. Business intelligence is the same sort of thing, just kind of like on steroids, even kind of slower to set up, extremely flexible, right? Extremely powerful. You can bring in lots of different types of data, again, but like time consuming to set up, but also you got to monitor it like visually. Data-driven sales management software is kind of a newer category of software out there, of which Atrium is an example. The benefits associated with this is extraordinarily easy to and quick to set up. Like as I mentioned earlier, like use Atrium as an example. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes to set up a free Atrium account. You just sign in with your Salesforce account. The downside is it is a little bit less flexible. You can't like build anything within it because it has like a couple hundred of like pre-baked KPIs. It's not thousands and thousands and thousands. So there is a little bit of like a downside associated with that. But the upside, what kind of comes with the upside there is that it ends up being automatically monitored because the system understands the metrics that are already pre-baked within it. They're statistically monitored there. So these are the different ways that people solve this. I'll kind of give you some more examples of what this looks like in practice here. So this right here would be an example of that like total with a trend here. So like very quickly here, we can see, oh, okay, here are the different totals right here. This is customer facing meetings this month. And then, Cyril Proudbottom here really looks like he's hitting the cover off the ball, which is absolutely fantastic. He might be somebody that we're interested in kind of saying, hey, what is the secret to your success? So we can get everybody else to do it. And then moreover, if we wanted to understand if this was like an aberration, well, lo and behold, we got the trend next to him. So we can actually see that our boy Cyril here is actually highly outperformant across the entirety of his the last 30 days there. By contrast, Michael Darling here, not only is he light this month, he's been light, he's the orange here, he's been light pretty consistently across the board. And then of course you can kind of do the same things. I'd mentioned how important it is to do this sort of thing in ramp. This is another kind of visualization of what that might look like. In this case, visualizing all of your AE's start date at the kind of the same point in time here, and then seeing how people are coming into ramp. Like as an example, you can see Angel 624 here was ramping okay, and then all of a sudden like, what's going on there, right? You can kind of see the same thing over here. This is customer facing meeting volumes ramping in the first month. Oh, looks like Herb's a little low there. So these are kind of some examples of what that might look like. And then when you're thinking about setting up dashboards, what you can do is like you can kind of lay out what that looks like what's the metric going to be, what's the time period in question, what's the grouping. And then what I like to do is kind of like pair these things together. So like this is an example of a dashboard for that would kind of like go out on a Monday morning or a Sunday morning or what have you, where you can see these are a bunch of things that happened last week. So bookings by rep last week, wins by rep last week, meetings per rep by last week, ops advanced, ops touched, new ops, etc. This is like everything that went on last week. And then it's the same metrics, but this month. So the total here. So like, oh, okay, here's what happened last week. Here's what's happened so far this month. And so by doing this and looking at this on a Monday morning or a Sunday evening or something like that, I can very quickly get an understanding of what's happening with this team. And so again, that would just be one example of a dashboard at a given point in time that aggregates together a bunch of different questions that I might be asking. Cool. So just really quick kind of like plug for Atrium here. All the stuff that we're talking about right now is literally what we focus on. And so what our kind of argument to the market is that sales management, so AE, SDR, AM, CSM management is so important, right? And that data-driven management and data-driven coaching is so important that there ought to be dedicated software that is specifically focused on helping managers use data and metrics to improve rep performance. And so what that looks like in the world is software that has every KPI that is required in order to monitor, measure, and improve the performance of those AEs, SDRs, AM, CSMs, already ready out of the box, ready to go, etc. But that's not sufficient by itself. What it also needs is it needs to be monitored. right? It needs to be monitored for those managers to help them see around corners. And so what that means is proactively tracking progress towards goals or the completion thereof on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. Having an early warning system that is monitoring all these KPIs to then communicate to you and say, hey, this rep over here has a win rate issue. And by the way, this other rep over here, somehow his average selling price is 30% higher than everybody else's. You should go investigate that and spread that to everybody else. So essentially like monitoring of this. And then lastly, doing actual diagnosis for you, saying, hey, this rep's bookings are pacing poorly here. And by the way, the reason why is because his win rate is off. And by the way, the reason why his win rate is off as compared to everybody else is because his conversion rate out of proposal is much lower than everybody else. So essentially doing automatic performance diagnosis like that. And so what our claim is that these are the required capabilities that a modern data-driven sales manager needs. And so asking somebody to like throw this together in a giant wall of charts and then like interpret it is really that's the last generation way of trying to attack this, and that the modern way of attacking this is with with dedicated software. And so literally that's what Atrium does, is it exists to help sales managers use data to improve team performance. We do this with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customers that we're really blessed to work with. So if you want to check it out, you can, again, like I noted, it takes 3 or 4 minutes to set up your own free Atrium account at atriumhq.com. But cool, we're going to get back to now, how do we action this? So we were talking about how we do coaching, how we do data-driven coaching, how we make place on the calendar for it, and how we have the assets in place. So now what we're going to talk about is how do you systematize that orientation and decision. And so the first thing is that we have to get good at reading the data. We can cheat a little bit of how the data read itself. We'll talk about that a little bit, but like first you got to get good at reading the data. And so really what that kind of takes like 3 steps. Like 1, detecting the issue, to diagnosing what the issue is, and then communicating that to the rep in question. So this is the coaching behavior here. So what does that look like in practice? So actually, these are screenshots that are from up above. And so this is kind of like a 101 version of this. The way to get good at reading the data is there's a couple of different ways to do that. So 1, when you have a total view, what you can look at is you can look at outperformance and you can look at underperformance, especially as relates to peers, like apples to apples. So in this case, we had noted this earlier, that Cyril here was outperforming, at least this month, as compared to his peers. And so that should be like the beginning of a line of inquiry to say, hey, wow, okay, that's cool. How long has this been being the case? Right? And so then going and looking to see if that's something that has been happening for quite some time, like for consistently over time, could indicate to us that there's potentially something for us to investigate there and share with the rest of the team. Similarly, underperformance as compared to peers, whether like across whether it's for customer facing meetings or any other metric, is not a sufficient indicator of a potential problem, but it's an indicator that this is it's an area of inquiry that's worth investigation. And so in this case with Nutsy the Vulture, what we would seek to do is we would say, oh, okay, cool. Here's how long has this been the case over time? And actually, I think I accidentally mixed these screenshots like a goofball when I was setting this up. But what you can see here is that this rep right here, Queen of Hearts, delightful name, has consistently outperformed, has been in the top performance with respect to their team on customer facing meetings, and moreover has done so even when the rest of the team's behavior deteriorated a little bit there. Similarly, I can see that a number of other reps are consistently underperforming. So like Judy Hopps here has been consistently low. Judy and Murlock, the magician, have consistently been low. And so that's something that I should be like, that should be an area of concern for me. And I would want to start those coaching conversations to say, hey, that we kind of talked about above, say, hey, I'm observing this right here. Can we talk about this together? So this is how we can visually detect issues and that like then puts us on the way to diagnosing what the root cause might be. We're going to talk about diagnosis here in a second. Another way you can kind of cheat in this regard, I don't know if it really counts as cheating so much as like adopting technology in order to be higher leveraged, is there actually is software that will do this statistical analysis for us. So rather than using our eyeballs to say, hey, that looks bigger, right? This bar chart is bigger. Software can actually do that and say, hey, this individual right here, Angel 624, she has 41% fewer new opportunities coming into her pipe in the last 30 days than her peers. Right? That's just like a statistical fact. We didn't have to use our eyeballs in order to do that. The software was just doing that for us. Or similarly, Harold the Seahorse, amazing name, has 75% more new opportunities coming into his pipeline than usual. Whoa, that outperformance is really, as compared to himself, is really fantastic. And so these are both examples of what we call anomalies or alerts in Atrium, where rather than having to use your eyeballs in order to like read the tea leaves, software can just do it for you. It can just do the stats for you. So then once once we've detected an issue, the question is, how do we actually diagnose what the root cause is? And this is like the Sherlock Holmes behavior that ends up being a little bit higher calorie for most managers, but it's definitely doable. And so the way to think about this is a metrics driver tree for the AE metrics driver tree, and this is SDR metrics driver tree. And so these are where different metrics interact with each other. So if you look at this, it kind of goes from left to right. You've got customer facing bookings right here. Where do bookings come from? Well, bookings comes from wins, average cross with average sales price, cross with average deal cycle. Oh, okay. Got it. So if somebody is pacing poorly with respect to bookings, what we would do is we would go right and say, hey, are their wins off? Or is their average selling price off? Or is their deal cycle elongating? Oh, well, their win count is low. Okay, interesting. Is that because their win rate has deteriorated, or is that because their at bats have deteriorated? The number of actual ops that they're getting. Oh, actually, their attempts are fine. The number of ops that they have in their pipe as compared to their peers is totally at par. It must be a win rate issue. Oh, okay. Well, like, where does win rate come from? Well, this is where things get a little bit more exciting. Is it a pipeline hygiene problem? Or is there a specific stage in their pipeline where opportunities are falling out of the pipe? Is their opportunity conversion rate deteriorating at certain points, or what have you? And so this is something that managers can do. We actually have this this example here as a handy dandy laminate, like desk reference set for folks to kind of keep on their desk. But the reality is that being able to like see an issue and then kind of go upstream ends up being very helpful there. And so then the way that we kind of make sure that this is happening and systematizing our looping back is to do that in our one-on-ones. And so this is a coaching meeting template, a one-on-one coaching meeting template here that I've taken a screenshot of. There's a Google Doc template right here. But the idea here is that as you're coming back to these meetings that again are on the calendar, there's space on the calendar to make sure that they're happening. We're having a specific coaching area of emphasis that we're holding ourselves accountable to, along with connections to various reporting to tell us whether or not we're progressing there. And of course, you can do this on a QBR basis, on a less frequent basis. So there's actually a QBR template here, excuse me, as well, which happens on a quarterly basis here. And so you can kind of see like highlights, lowlights, plan for the coming quarters, etc. Cool. So that's like how to do this stuff in the abstract. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys through a couple of different examples of like what this looks like, both with respect to my team and then some of the other teams that we've worked with, that can kind of show you how data-driven sales management and coaching can change behavior and make people and improve performance and improve outcomes. So first example of here, we had a rep who was on track for a miss for a period, a month. And so what was interesting here, of course, is that what we wanted to investigate is saying, oh, okay, well, if you're on track for a miss, what's the issue? Was it an opportunity inflow issue? So this is this is new opportunities coming into that rep's pipe. as compared to their peers? Not really. It's not. Huh. But then what we ended up finding was that there had been, when we looked one step deeper and looked at the number of opportunities that got to stage stage one, so got out of meeting pending and got into discovery or beyond that, even though the opportunity inflow wasn't problematic there, the number of ops that were actually getting into that next stage ended up deteriorating pretty substantially. And so at the time, we hadn't caught that, unfortunately. But the good news is that we weren't going to get tricked by that again, right? So what we were able to do was diagnose what the issue was, and lo and behold, we saw this. And then next, what we did, we said, oh, okay, well, now we're going to start monitoring that. So instead of just only monitoring opportunity inflow, we're also going to look at how many opportunities go to Disco Plus on a monthly basis in order to make sure that we don't get head faked again and say, hey, everything's hunky dory. Look at these opportunities that are coming in the pipe. Oh, just kidding. Not very many of them are getting to Disco Plus. And then moreover, what we did is we actually set a team goal on that. So Atrium would then just continually automatically monitor that to help us understand what the issue, if there is any issues there. So that's like one example there. And so the good news is like we don't have that issue anymore because we catch it early on. Second example here would be with respect to a rep who is having issues moving ops through the funnel. So this is a little bit more of a advanced topic. So this is an opportunity conversion rate visualization. What you can see is on the bottom here, these are stages, and these are opportunity stages. And on the y-axis here, we can see the percentage of opportunities that convert out of that stage, right? So move to the next step. And so this rep right here in orange, we can see actually had, as compared to the team average, which is blue, had a couple areas where he was under as compared to his peers. So specifically getting out of meeting pending here. So like making sure that meetings actually hold, making sure that things actually get out of proposal, and then making sure that things that where contracts have gone out actually end up closing. And so what we did was we sought to improve their behavior at the top of the funnel. So this is actually now looking at conversion rate out of discovery. So one stage, if this was all the stages here, this is one stage, and looking at that conversion rate over time, because these are different months. And what you can see is that that rep was light here. And so what we sought to do was really, really focus in this case, on that rep of like setting next steps with the client, making sure that they were getting that next meeting on the calendar, taking control of the call, and making sure that we're driving to a next action, making sure in pre-call planning, we knew what our intended exit was for that call, and then driving to that, lining that up in the call, like as one of the metaphors we use is like swimming towards that goal, as opposed to kind of just like being pushed around in the call. And so lo and behold, what you can see here is a substantial jump in conversion rate out of disco, which is good. Data-driven coaching in practice. Hey, we're seeing this issue. Let's change your behavior. Oh, look, your behavior changed. Oh, look, the metrics changed. All right, fantastic. Well, what also came out of that? Well, what you can see here is this is a different metric that is measuring the number of opportunities that get to a specific stage, in this case, a pilot. And so you can see that historically, that rep, this is again the same rep, was light as compared to his peers, and also his peers were as well. And then by focusing in on driving to that next action, you can see this spectacular jump in the number of opportunities that are getting into a pilot here without a change in the number of opportunities that are flowing into their pipe. Just the conversion rate went up, as we kind of saw here, right? And then moreover, this is kind of a separate thing, but kind of a related root cause of just like taking control, being proactive, etc. You can see that this is a metric card that is measuring win rate from a given stage. And in this case, the stage is proposal. And so what this is looking at is the win rate from opportunities, like of the opportunities that get to proposal, stage 4 or 5 or whatever it is, how many of those end up winning in the future. Right? It's pretty important. Like it should probably be pretty high. Should be higher than your average win rate across all stages. And lo and behold, what you can see here is that this rep was lighter, as kind of indicated up here, right? And then what we did was we focused in on making sure that, again, doing good call behavior, making sure that the rep like knew where he was at in the deal and was driving towards the the required next action. And so what you can see here is a jump from a win rate at a proposal of around 40 to 60% to up to 80%, 90%, etc. So again, changing behavior in order to drive better performance. And so what kind of came out of this is their conversion rate improved all around. So before, that rep was, as you may remember, was light with respect to these various stages as compared to their peers, and now they weren't, which is fantastic. And that's literally how we solve that problem, by making individual reps better, by addressing their shortfall and driving to a finish there. Similarly, you can see this is this is a rep who was having issues with call behavior. Last example here, where was having an issue with respect to conversion rate out of proposal and conversion rate out of contract. And then similarly, you could see this with respect to their win rate out of proposal. And so what was happening here is that this rep was doing a poor job of closing, of like ensuring closing behavior. And so what we did was we focused in on closing phrases, deal control. Actually, we were users of Gong over here, and we actually integrate Gong's data into Atrium. And so helping this rep do a better job of using closing phrases, and also putting trackers in place to ensure that those are happening in those calls. And so what you can see here is that win rate jumped up to, from the win rate from proposal, jumped up from this deficit here to almost in line with the rest of the team. Not quite there, but getting better. We also focus on helping the rep further up the funnel, talk less during customer calls, specifically around discovery. And what you could see here, like literally what we focus on is saying, hey, every time you finish a sentence, put your tongue on the top of your mouth. And it will help remind you to stop talking. And what you can see here is their talk ratio in Gong improved substantially. So they were the worst on the team with respect to that. And then you can see the substantial dive with respect to their talk ratio there. So again, this is an example of data-driven coaching, changing behaviors and then driving positive outcomes. Again, longest monologue, you can see that this rep really liked to talk for quite amount of time, and then this improved very substantially after that coaching happened. And then what happens, of course, is their proposal behavior jumps up accordingly. So those are a couple different examples of like what this looks like in practice. I know there's a lot of content. I hope folks really enjoyed it. I really did. This subject is like very near and dear to my heart. If you want to get a copy of Crushing Quota and 5 Secrets of the Sales Coach, we will drop that link. You can register for that. But the other thing too is I hope you exited this presentation understanding why coaching is so important and why data-driven coaching is the high leverage modern way of doing this. If you want to check out how Atrium can help you do that, it takes a couple of minutes to set up an Atrium account. You can just set up a free Atrium account by signing in with your Salesforce account, and we'll get you all set up there for a tour of your data. But yes, this is absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed meeting everybody here. Oops. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing.